Chief?
Something that we've already discussed. Did Andrew get one?
Okay. I'd like to call to order Wednesday, December 12th, 2012 regular Board of Education meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Brady.
Present.
Mrs. Capobianca is not here. Mr. Caballero. Here. Mrs. Homan here. Mr. Kisco.
Here.
Mr. Marola.
Here.
Mr. Nargi. Mr. Rivero.
Here.
Mr. Tebow.
Here.
Mr. Traub.
Here.
Mrs. Batchelder. Here. Mrs. DeMonico. Here. Mr. Jocelyn.
Here.
Mrs. Klacko. Here. Mayor Bingham. Austin Kelson. Kevin Flynn. Rachel Kelly.
Okay. Number 2, school community session. The board invites members of the community to speak on topics to be addressed in the agenda or on other topics of interest. Individuals wishing to make comments are requested to fill out the speaker sign-up sheet located at the guest table, including name and address, which must be stated at the beginning of your comments. The board will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. Courtesy is expected in this limited public forum. The participating time will be limited to 3 minutes per person, 10 minutes overall, to guarantee an efficient operation of the meeting.
None signed up. Anybody signing up to speak?
Okay, we have none? All right. Approval of the agenda. Get a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Ellen, second by Dan. All those in favor? Approval of meeting minutes for the Board of Education meeting for November 14th. So moved by Carl, second by Chris. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Abstentions? 1. Daniel. Okay. Informational sharing and discussion items. We have no student representatives, so if they arrive, we'll move that to later. Superintendent report.
Okay, at this time, I would like to recognize students from the sophomore class who are now juniors who achieved at the advanced level on all components of the CAP test. This is the standardized test that all sophomores are required to take and complete. From the Connecticut State Department of Education. I'm going to read the names, and I'm going to ask those who are present to please come forward. And yes, we have certificates to receive their certificates. As we go. Michaela Votari, Joanne Duman, Sydney Matsko, Todd Meliton, Haley Ross, Chloe Milaro, Caitlin Wallace, and Abigail Whaler. Would you all please come forward? This is quite an honor for these students because they are challenging and rigorous tests, and the expectations to get to the advanced level in language arts, math, and science. They've served our Torrington High School very proud, so thank you very much. The next part in your packet was a report to provide how we use the services from our Education Resource Agency, Education Connection. Mr. Kisco is our representative to it from the board, but it does serve us and help us in many, many ways. And we pay a general membership fee, and then we receive ways for professional development, enrichment activities for students, science Saturdays, early childhood support through with the Torrington Early Childhood Collaborative, and then they also support with our second language learning. Some of the professional development of the faculty this year has been implementation of Common Core standards, data team training, analyzing student work, getting ready for the next general assessment, the generation of assessments, how to differentiate instruction, instructional rounds, and just through that piece we had over 150 teachers participate. So you can read through the packet yourself. I'm not going to tell you everything that we participated in, but it is our educational resource service area, and they are quite helpful to us, and we appreciate, you know, their partnership with Torrington Public Schools. Any questions about that connection? Okay. The next component is the Community Literacy Center, and this is at Forbes School, but it is for all of Torrington's families. It was made available through not only a redesign at Forbes School, but it was also with a grant from the Community Foundation. It's open specifically Tuesday evenings, and there are parent activities that occur there to help develop families with understanding literacy for their young children. There are materials that families can take out and use at home. It's a lending library. We're also in partnership with Torrington Library and our Family Resource Center at Vogel Wetmore School. So it's really a three-pronged partnership, again, to really get literacy in our birth to age 9 homes, and really having people, parents, and families understand how important this early literacy training is. Every week, every Tuesday, there's a different topic. They've done sign language with families the first week. During the month of December, they're doing a book for every child, which is a holiday event, and every child who comes gets a free book. And they also put out a newsletter, both in English and Spanish. So we're really trying to reach out to the community and to promote the whole literacy component. But it is open, even though it's located at Forbes, it is open to all families in the Torrington area, whether their children are in school or not. So it's from our birth to age 5, before they come to kindergarten. And the teacher who works with helps present the programs and who set it all up is early literacy specialist. There was a very nice article in the Waterbury Republican that Bruno did about science of learning abound at the Family Literacy Center. So we're really trying to get it out there to families. And we do an e-alert every week to let them know what topic is coming up. Question? Now, just want to share with you, you're always hearing how expensive things are. Well, we were very fortunate. As you're all aware that we had an energy upgrade with replacement of the chillers at Torrington Middle School, and then we went on to replace most of the lights within the school, and received a CLMP incentive check. So the final incentive check was $439,466.50. And but then we upgraded and added additional soffit lights to LED. So that was a higher cost. So our net savings was $115,020.50 payment. We have written a letter to the mayor asking him that maybe hold on to this money so that we can put it, you know, for our next upgrading, which will be the solar project at Forbes after we do the roof. And then money that we save from that will continue to go on. You know, any incentives we get will always go to upgrading lighting or something dealing with energy within our buildings. So we sent a letter last week and I'm waiting for a response. But I'm holding on to the check.
I did talk to the mayor on behalf of the board to ask him about this reimbursement, if they could set it aside for us. And they said that what they would do is take these reimbursement checks and give it back to us to fund another energy efficiency project. And whatever we get from that energy efficiency deposit or project as a refund, they'll give us that back for the next one, so that we can just continue to roll the rebates into further energy efficiency projects. And he was in agreement with it, and they just asked us to send a letter and they would set the money aside.
Mr. Chair, can I ask, I know I'm not seeing the board member, but is it possible that I could put a letter of recommendation for Mr. Bezzetta's file for doing his due diligence and moving forward in this project in the best manner for the people of Torrington? Is that acceptable? I don't know.
Send a letter on, the work he did, because the work with the chillers and getting all that done to completion, but also his efforts, because that was, I can't say what I was going to say tonight, but, you know.
Yes.
It would, I think, as we move forward, that we have this pool of money, you know, it's really capital, and the more energy efficient we can make our buildings or have a better green footprint, I think, you know, we'll be better off all the way around, so.
Lower long-term operating costs are always a positive. So.
And this increase in the rebate, for those that were at the meeting, that was prior to you, Carl, when we originally set forth on this next-gen project, we were given a rebate level that was very substantial. And then when CL&P came in and did the presentation for us, that rebate level was considerably lower. They used a very conservative, where in the original proposal was a very aggressive reimbursement rate. We ended up coming in closer to the aggressive reimbursement rate from CL&P. So we ended up budgeting the project at the lower reimbursement rate, but we did receive a much higher, which, you know, we qualified a lot better than we thought. It was good. Good. Okay. Special education questions and answers. And we have our director of
Special education.
special education. Okay.
Looking at the packet, one of the questions from last time was just, you know, employment, who served in what capacity. And Beth, it's the, you know, showing president and 10 years ago.
Correct.
So if you want to just go through that with the board, please. You'll see.
Yep. What you have is a comparison between where we were 10 years ago and where we are now. We have added in some areas, we have significantly decreased in others. And I'm trying to find the one that's in here.
Excuse me, Beth, for a minute. The other thing you might want to take a look at is not the next sheet, but the sheet after that, which also shows the special education numbers by school and disabilities. Because, of course, this year we've added 3 more programs to maintain students in district rather than for out of district tuition. So when you see a greater number of special education teachers, that's a good reason why. So go ahead, Beth, I'm sorry.
So 10 years ago, right before I arrived,
We had 3 people in administrative positions. When I came the following year, there were 4 of us. Presently, there's 1, myself. For special education teachers, at the time we had 41 special education teachers 10 years ago. Now we have 49. As Cheryl said, we expanded 3 of the programs so that we could have a greater capacity to maintain students in the district in very significantly disabled categories.
And Beth, how many of those 49 were added this past year?
3. As far as psychology is concerned, we had, 10 years ago we had 5, 9 years ago we had 6. We now have 6, but one of them also performs as the out-of-district coordinator. We had 6 social workers. Now, 10 years ago, we also had 6, so we haven't gone down. At some point, we had 7, but we did drop by 1 because one school chose not to have a social worker. Occupational therapists, right now, we have 6. 10 years ago, we had 3. The increase is due to the expansion of our preschool program plus the number of children that come into the district who are under the autism spectrum category. 10 years ago, we had the 3 occupational therapists were all contracted people. We no longer contract for occupational therapists. We've brought them into the district as our own employees. It has saved us a great deal of money. We're actually paying them for their work and not paying agencies to employ them for us, which was at a higher rate. We now have 9 special speech and language teachers. 10 years ago we had 7. The expansion there is also because of the expansion of the preschool program and because of the number of students coming in on the autism spectrum. 10 years ago we had a teacher of the hearing impaired and 2 physical therapists. We have added, for this year, we have a teacher, certified teacher for Wilson. We had to fill in the gap until we have our own, which at the end of this year we'll have 10. We needed to hire a sign language interpreter because we have a child who is significantly hearing impaired and needs that. We still have our teacher of a hearing impaired. We have 2 behaviorists that we have employed, and what's not on your list for this year was left off by mistake. We have 2 physical therapists who help us with those services. Any questions about that? Okay. We've given you some information by school. I'm going to keep saying this to you guys. It is a snapshot in time. So when this data was taken, it was as of that date. It changes daily. Numbers go up and down, kids move in, kids move out. It's a moving target most of the time. But this will give you a general idea of where we are with our numbers at each school and the programs that we have and how many children in each disability category we have at each school. Any questions about that? I was asked to give you an explanation of what the out-of-district coordinator does and what the in-district coordinator does. You have that. They are not administrators. They do not have 092s. One of them is a school psychologist. The other is a school social worker. But they, at PPTs, they are considered administrator designees. Anybody within the pupil service department can act as an administrator designate. So basically, they run the meetings, they make comments or suggestions on programming. What they're not allowed to do is make any major administrative decisions. They cannot make any decisions regarding something that might cost us money. They have to check with me first. They cannot make any program changes without asking me about it. If it's going to cause a child to move from one school to another school, that has to go through me as the administrator of the department. But you can say they have a long list of things that they do. And the support that they provide for the district is invaluable. Any questions about that?
Does anybody have one over here? John? Carl? Beth, do you have any idea, 10 years ago, I know you were just coming in, how many special ed recognized children did you work at?
I don't know 10 years ago. I do have numbers over a period of time.
You gave us 3 years last time.
Yeah.
I was just curious because we're comparing the staffing levels over a 10-year period if we knew what the coverage was.
We were somewhere probably in the 700 to 800s at that time.
And currently we have,
As of our October 1st count, we had 778.
thank you.
But that includes all of them, okay? It's not just, it's district, out of district, parent, court, DCF, and the tech schools.
Thank you for that, Beth.
You're welcome.
Motion to carry.
Legal
Well, we're
services.
done with that.
Okay, we're all set?
We'll move on to E, evaluation of special education law.
Okay.
This question's been brought up. Unfortunately, Fiona was not able to make it tonight. She did email me and asked me to make sure that we still covered this topic tonight. So the outstanding question is, the board gave a directive to go to a single law firm, and we're currently using two without the board knowing that we were switching to two. So if you can shed light on that situation, that would be greatly appreciated.
When we started with Shipman and Goodwin, we had an attorney that we were trying to work with. Unfortunately, she didn't have the history of Torrington Public Schools. And what we found was the level of dedication to the district was not what we were used to having. The board had given this department the mandate to protect our students, protect the district in any legal issues, and do it for the least amount of money. So after a number of attempts to work with the attorney from Shipman and Goodwin, I had a conversation with Mr. Leone, who was the superintendent at that time, and he told me to return to use Michelle Lobbin. So I did, and we got the same very dedicated, quick response activity that we had had before, and we were well represented. The following year, Mrs. Placco became the acting superintendent, and before I did anything, I asked her permission to continue to use Ms. Lobbin. I was given permission to do that, and so I continued to use Mrs. Lobbin, Attorney Lobbin.
We were also in the middle of some high stakes.
Oh, we had a number, originally I was given permission to use Attorney Lovin for any cases that were continuing, and we had several. And we are still involved with some of those now, and will be with some of those for years to come, because the children will be ours until they're 21. But there were other issues that needed to happen. We've had a few mediations over the last couple of years. We have some other legal issues. I gave you a packet on what would trigger legal issues, and I've gone to her to get advice, and she has represented us well.
Can you refresh my memory, what is our policy? What is the actual contract? How does that read with our designated law firm? Are we paying a lump sum, a yearly lump sum, or is it just a per use fee?
It's by the hour.
I'm not suggesting that the work that's being performed by the law firm that you're utilizing is better or worse than utilizing Goodwin and Shipman. But it's disturbing when I hear that board, it's one of our hires, we hire the attorney for the board to represent the board and the district, and when I hear that the superintendent bypassed the board in this hire, it's concerning to me, and it's concerning to me that not only was it done originally bypassing the board, but it continued on bypassing the board. I don't know why it didn't come before the board. Clearly, you make a valid argument to retain this law firm, but from a procedural perspective, it bothers me. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about the procedural aspect of having administrators not come before the board and make their request.
I share a concern in this matter in the fact that I'm pleased the district has decided to keep the best interests of the students in the district at the forefront. I would, however, be curious how much was presented to Shipman and Goodwin indicating a dissatisfaction with the firm, and I'd like to hear what the firm had done to try to alleviate these concerns for the district, as we were not informed of these concerns previously. Again, I respect people's ability to get the job done. I have concerns when they just decide to move ahead of the curve without even making a notice that they're doing it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the decision to stick with the original was done under the prior superintendent. So I don't know what was given to the law firm. I mean, the practice has continued, but when it originally happened, I mean, we can talk to them and find out what Shipman and Goodwin was told. I mean, they just haven't been called to do the work, so they are not necessarily aware that we're doing the work. So it's,
yes, but this isn't the first time this board has brought this issue forward, so it is something the administration has been well aware of. So again, I just would like to know what concerns were brought to Shipman and Goodwin that they were unable to address that caused the retention of the prior law firm after we had decided to move forward with Shipman and Goodwin.
just get a roll. John, you had a discussion, Carl?
I don't think there's an issue with any cases that have been prior to switching over with Shipman and Goodwin. I mean, that's my take on that anyway. But if there's an issue that you have with the dedication level of Shipman and Goodwin, then I just would not want to get something brought to us.
Wondering what the hourly difference is between the two at this we're talking about saving money, and of course, you know, a skill set can save you money even if it's more expensive by getting the job done faster, right? But is it a lower hourly rate that we're paying?
Yes.
It is lower.
It is lower.
Yeah, it's either 40 or 50 an hour lower.
Lower.
And as you know, special ed, legal, bills are a lot.
I think the bigger conversation then is how much of our legal fees annually are devoted exclusively to special ed, and in renewing our contract with whatever law firm we have going forward, that should be considered. So I don't know if we can get that number.
I would just like to say that I had experience with the special ed attorney from Shipman in another capacity that I was serving in. But now is in this position, I mean, with everything that we've been dealing with, their services has, you know, been excellent. But with the person who was responsible for special education, not satisfactory.
The only, I guess to go back to Beth's comment, to Rob's comment, is it is nice that there's a comfort level. And you said that Shipman and Goodwin didn't have the history.
It did not have the history.
But there's gonna come a time that you're going to have to switch attorneys because their attorney will either move, retire, whatever. There is always gonna be that transition time where there will not be the history. So, you know, my personal opinion, and I think I'm agreeing with several others on the board, is using the fact that there was the history is not necessarily just a green light to continue to use someone. I understand on the existing cases, but on the new cases, you know, I don't know if that really should have just continued on. And in knowing the firm, Shipman and Goodwin, there is more than one attorney over there that handles special ed. We may have gotten one that didn't mesh well with our district, but that we perhaps should have tried others before we just, I know it's always easy to use the old pair of moccasins because they're comfortable, but there does come a time that the new shoe has to get broken in. And, you know, perhaps we should talk to them. I think the board's general consensus is we should probably talk to them about the performance and take a look at what else they have to offer us versus just continuing with two separate law firms and look at the money savings. When we do negotiate their contract over, we should look at, hey, we're getting special education legal. I'm just gonna throw numbers out there. We're paying $300 an hour for firm A, and you know, you're $375. And we were not, you know, the district was not comfortable with the person we were working with, so we would like to try somebody else, but we also have to talk about the 300 versus the 375.
I think the history was just a small piece of it, to be honest with you. Being charged less was a bigger piece of that. I honestly don't know what the conversation was between Superintendent Leone and Shipman and Goodwin, but when he gave me permission to continue with Michelle Lobbin, basically his statement to me was Shipman and Goodwin had told him that if that's who we were comfortable with, we could continue with her. Whether there was another attorney offered or anything like that, I was not privy to any of that conversation.
Well, and I don't think any of us will know that conversation, but just going forward, that perhaps we should you know, look at, try it, see if we can get a better reaction with their, you know, and then talk to them. I know they have more than one attorney in the firm.
Yep, I agree with everything that my fellow board members are saying. I think it's also important to understand that, once again, we sit in these chairs for a specified period of time, and then we hand these seats off to other people. So there's what we do today becomes past practice for the boards of tomorrow. And it's very, very important, in my opinion, that the Board of Education do everything in its power. And we have the policy set up to do that, and we need to adhere to it in the strictest terms which these people are asking. It's really important to know that the attorneys that we hire are the board attorneys, and with all due respect, not the administrative attorneys. Nothing that is to cast no aspersions on this group of administrators. However, I was in a position a number of years ago where we got into an extremely litigious situation, and that became a major issue for us. Is where those loyalties lie. And essentially, we're talking about a board attorney here, lawyers, and so therefore, it is imperative that we do as Ken suggests. We need a process, number one, a simple process. If they're going to go outside, I also agree that the administration has absolutely the necessity to make administrative, executive decisions in specific cases like this. Okay, so they're well within the right. But they got to somehow. There's got to be a clear, simple reporting out of an exception. I don't know if the board wants that to happen at the policy committee, because basically it's an exception to the policy. But basically, if you're going to do something, you go, and if it's an immediate situation, naturally you go to the executive, you go to the chairman or the vice chair. But then at some point, it needs to be reported out in a regular, systematic style and then the questions can be asked that you're asking and everybody else is asking. So I think at the end of this conversation tonight, we should at least have that clear directive to the administration.
We can show that out in the budget report every month, because what you don't realize is we do use a third attorney, because when we go into expulsion hearings or other things, as superintendent, I cannot use Shipman and Goodwin. I need a different attorney.
Right, I'm just wondering if the board wants to be prescriptive about this and have the administrator essentially ask for permission to make an exception. Does the board want to do that? Or simply allow the administration to make their decisions to go outside of the policy and then report when they've done that? Two different ways, and they have both different long-term consequences. And 10 of us need to make, or 9 of us need to make a decision on that.
And we could show it every month in the budget, to which attorney special ed.
Right, but it's just in terms of practice, it happens for this board. How does
And I think going along with what Paul's trying to say is, no one's questioning the abilities of the attorney that you're currently using. I think that we all feel that the attorneys at Shipman and Goodwin probably possess the same abilities. And we just, because there was a directive of the board to go to one, and I understand that that transition happened, or the transition didn't happen under a prior administration, and the process has continued, we would just, I think the board's trying to say now that we don't want the process to continue unless there's an extenuating circumstance. If you feel that there's a reason something should, if you had a case that was closed and that something came up relative to that case where the past history of that attorney is very beneficial to it, I think that's an extenuating circumstance that I don't know anyone would argue. And I think we would all say it's a great idea. If we set up a meeting with Shipman and Goodwin, their price remains, what did I say, 375 to 300, something like that. If they remain at an elevated price and there's still a personality conflict with the new person that we introduced to, I think that you notify the board, and you would get permission from the board at that point. If we feel it's hampering the ability and it's just causing more hours and more cost, I'm sure everybody at the table is going to say, use the less expensive streamlined version. And I think that the board really just feels that they should have been notified that we weren't going with the attorney that was prescribed by the board. And I think would everybody agree that if going forward, if the administration has to make a decision, I guess we would need input as to how they would make that decision, whether it would be.
Can't wait for the next board
Right.
meeting.
So,
Well, I think to simplify the process, if it's a new case that cannot wait for a full board meeting, then I would think a simple email notifying the board as a whole of the situation, and after having a conversation with the chair or the exec committee of the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary, to say, okay, this is what we'd like to do. May we have permission to go outside the board's purview of their recommended attorney that they've hired?
There's one thing, because I would be writing about a student with special needs.
No,
and
you
that's
wouldn't.
No, but I'm saying that's a confidential.
You're not telling us about the student, you're simply asking for permission to go outside.
you would just state, I have a very sensitive situation. I
Yes.
would like to go
Okay.
outside of the.
We don't need to know
board.
the situation,
We don't
we're
have to
simply
know.
asking for permission.
Okay.
So that way there, you're just not doing it and then notifying us. You're asking and we're saying, yes, go ahead. or,
Just if you didn't know.
It'd be nice not to have to keep talking about this.
yeah.
Carl. Vince. Okay. Chris, do you have any recommendations as the attorney?
Save us money, just save us money, that's, I understand the process, and I agree with you, Paul, and I know what you're saying, but I mean, you're talking $50 an hour for one individual times however many individuals.
Another thing to dovetail with Chris is, if a student comes into our district, if they're special ed, we have them for 15+ years. So there's always going to be a history with the current law firm. They know every single student that we deal with, so it's always going to cost more money to use someone else right now because they have to be filled in on everything they've done so far.
But the point is Michelle Lawman eventually is going to retire.
Right.
And when that happens, the transition has to happen. So however painful it is, at some point it will inevitably happen. So that's,
we can embrace.
yeah, that's kind of a hard, you can't use that as the basis. The saving money, the streamline, better service, that's a good reason, but the transition, at some point, everybody retires. So we have to keep in mind that you can't just use that as the main reason. Hi, did I skip you? I'm sorry.
Can we just make a motion to have the administration use their best judgment to save the district money, to use the best possible person at the most cost-effective from now forward?
That defeats the previous directive.
Because we made a directive on the
Can we
board to
change
use
the
more law.
directive?
You can issue a new directive, or you can just ask the administration to notify the board if they go outside of that directive. That they have a need to go outside the directive, hey, I have to go outside the directive.
I agree with that.
I mean, it's not, they're not violating it if we give them permission to do it.
Okay.
We just have, the point that Paul was trying to make was sometimes, and Cheryl was trying to make, these are short-term, they have to be made. You can't wait for the next board meeting. How do you want to give them that permission?
When does the contract with Shipman and Goodwin come up for?
We don't have a contract.
We don't have, they're just working on by the hour. Yes,
All right, so if we're speaking to just general directives, I understand that, but how do we remediate this situation specifically going forward? Are we going to continue using the former attorney for all cases that existed before Shipman and Goodwin, and then from now on Shipman and Goodwin? I don't understand how we're handling this specific situation going forward.
The directive of the board was to use the old law firm to finish out existing cases and to use the new law firm for new cases.
Right, and that's not happening.
Right.
So we discussed maybe having a discussion with Shipman and Goodwin and getting maybe a different attorney to handle that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the options that was thrown out.
All right, does there need to be, does that need to be a motion? It was an option on the floor, but I mean, just to go forward. What do we
No, the only thing that we need to do is come up with some type of a process for the administration if they need to move outside of the board's directive. We just need to come up with, how do we want to frame it? Do we want them to call the leadership team? Do we want them to call a special board meeting? Which, how would we want to do that if we want to give them that permission?
Well, that seems more like a general discussion as opposed to the specific issue.
It is a general discussion. It's based on any directive.
Ken, there's a policy that covers this. May I read it?
Sure.
In addition to the board-appointed attorney, it is recognized that there may be situations in which the superintendent shall be responsible for hiring special legal counsel for circumstances which may require counsel apart from the board's previously appointed legal advisor. In such instances, the superintendent shall notify the board leadership of any hires pursuant to this section and the reason for such hire in a timely manner, except for expulsion and transportation hearings. It's already spelled out, unless you want to change the policy.
So we just need to keep
Policy 2008, we reviewed it in 2010.
What's the number of the policy?
2008.
Is everybody okay?
But what defines what defines special?
It doesn't define it.
That's why it's special.
So it's what we've been saying, just have the superintendent notify the executive.
Well, has the superintendent been doing that?
They haven't, that's what we're.
They haven't.
We're trying, what's
But
happening.
she's saying that they,
No.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is, what we've been saying is already in practice. We're just asking the superintendent to follow the policy.
which she hasn't been doing for the past several years.
The prior administration gave the special education department the ability to stick with the attorney, and the new administration has stayed with that policy. We're identifying that, we're identifying that the administration has not been following the board directive. We're giving them a direction to go forward. Follow this policy and this procedure so that this doesn't happen again. Yes, Mitzi, go ahead.
All right, I feel like I'm sort of like picking hairs at this, but it seems like I understand the general conversation about having, the administration make special decisions under special circumstances. But if we're talking about going forward with this law firm, how are we remediating that? Does that mean every time we have a new case where we need to use Shipman and Goodwin, is that a special circumstance where the administration can say, okay, we can go ahead and use the former attorney? Or I'm just wondering how we go forward. I don't understand.
Can I say something? Yes. We are involved in several cases, okay, where for whatever reason a family may be dissatisfied with the service that their child's receiving in special education. Okay. If Shalwabin has been involved with this, and it could be over 1, 2, 5 years, whatever, we will continue with her, okay? If a new case comes up tomorrow, and Dr. Robin gets a call from the state, and we're going into arbitration or whatever, and it's not someone who's been involved with a case, it's not a case that Michelle Robin has not been involved with, we'll pick up the phone, we'll call Shipman and Goodwin, and we will say, we need a special education attorney to handle this.
That's perfect. That's exactly what it is. But
And I'm going to ask Mr. Mills to come and have a sit-down with the superintendent, myself, Fiona, if she's able, Ellen, and Dr. Robin, and see if we can't figure out what the dissatisfaction is. Make sure that Shipman and Goodman is aware that there was a dissatisfaction and that they have the opportunity to fix it. We will also mention the financial difference and see if they can correct the disparity in the wages. And if all is even, straight ahead. Sound good?
Yep.
Yes.
Is that all right? Okay. Library and textbooks. I believe this is Dana.
This was brought up or asked about 2 months ago. The fourth sheet is a spreadsheet of where we are from July 1 through November 30th for textbooks and library books separated out by school. In the far column, it gives the balance remaining as of November 30th. I asked the principals why purchases aren't made sooner for library and textbooks. And for the elementary principals, I'm going to combine pretty much all 5 responses because they really did all say the same thing. That fall assessments need to be completed before they can determine which level of word study notebooks they need, and those assessments aren't given until October. The first 6 weeks of school, we use teacher-made spelling resources, and then once the assessments are administered and analyzed, word study groups are formed, and they use words their way. Also with the new Common Core standards, the teachers are currently reading professional books that are helping us to determine titles that are appropriate for each grade level. Things are changing over the next few years with the Common Core, and instead of doing what we've always done, we're trying to do what we need to do moving forward. So that is the reason why things aren't expended right in July and August for textbooks. It is a year-long process. Also, the book fairs are in the fall for the library, and the library books, and they get a lot of discounts purchasing from the book fair versus catalogs. So they also save their money for that event. The middle school expended their resources in the high school for textbooks. When compiling the budget for textbooks, the departments take in consideration the increased class size, replacement cost, and book rebinding. They're putting the budget together in November, December for the next year, and they take a certain amount of students they project are going to be in the classrooms and multiply it by the projected rate of a book. That's really how they get most of the library cost books, because you can't put an exact number to it. So it is a budgetary process. And Mrs. Creedon also said there's a small amount of money remaining in the mathematics and social studies budget, which they also do plan to spend. And the bulk of the remaining money at the high school is in the English, which is about $3,800, and that is going to be used to purchase humanistic traditional textbooks. So that answers the question that was asked 2 months ago.
I have potentially the largest balance on that sheet, and part of the reason for that was our ability to pre-purchase books at the end of last year that are being used for elementary literacy. And our Common Core standards curriculum development is also driving what books we need. At this time, publishers are still in the process of revising programs and series in order to align them with the Common Core standards. And currently there are none that are on the market that we consider to be adequate resources for us moving forward. We don't want to buy something for 1 year and then have to make a change another year or two out. So between the pre-purchasing and the ongoing decisions that are being made as the curriculum is under revision currently, there will not be a penny of that left, but we need to make sure that we're purchasing the correct items as we go forward.
And the other piece too is that with middle school, they're really looking to how they can use technology to develop what resources they will use for students in studying a specific topic or within a specific unit. So rather than using the textbook, use multiple resources to develop. First of all, you can provide multi-reading levels, but also you can provide multi-resources, and one of the critical things of the new standards is for students to be able to read many resources, different types of text to gain information, synthesize it, evaluate, and then decide their response, to a question or something they're studying.
Any discussion? Yes. So, as the curriculum overseer, as you do your work in the course of the year, are you doing the work based on events that take place this year and will be implemented in this school year, or is most of your work geared towards analyzing what's happening this year and moving it to the next year, so as to create new curriculum, new concepts for teaching in the upcoming year, not the present year?
The real long-term, heavy lifting, vertical articulation of curriculum is done by teams in the summertime, and that's part of the 3-year curriculum cycle that we have in place, and we'll be considering math and science this year, English and social studies the following year, and the non-core subjects the other year. The unfortunate reality of the Connecticut adoption of the Common Core state standards is that when the standards were adopted by the state in 2010, had a year to compare them to our current practice a year to begin to make the transitions. And then essentially we're building the airplane as we're flying it. We are expected to be making the changes and the transitions in the curriculum as we go along. So we have the elementary level, these efforts are being led by our literacy specialists and reading consultants in association with their literacy teams in each school to make the recommendations about the new materials that we need in order to implement the Common Core standards as we are going along. The same thing is true with numeracy. We've been able to assemble a group that we call the Math Collaborative, which includes teacher representations, 2 to 4 teachers at each grade level who are working in consultation with our consulting teacher for math to actually revise the curriculum and roll it out as we are going along. So the collaborative team will meet, they'll develop a unit, they'll identify resources, we'll begin to put in orders for resources, and teachers will actually be handed packets of materials and said, here's the next piece of the puzzle, and if you can implement it on your own, go for it. If you need assistance will continue to be provided for you by the consulting teacher and through the efforts of your peers at grade level meetings and or department meetings. So we are literally creating units and then teaching them within the same month because of the aggressive timeline that we have to keep in order to transition to the Common Core standards in time to be ready for the new assessments that our students will have to take in 2015. So it really is on the fly. It's not the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat, this is more of a general observation. You would think that the education process would be much more thought out, developed before you actually began your school year. That's really the concept of why I even brought this whole question up, as to really try and understand how curriculum is developed, maybe what you actually do as the overseer of curriculum, and how it actually gets to the teachers to be implemented in a school year. And I just would find it to be, as a teacher, somewhat unnerving, upsetting to be thinking that you may have taught this course for X amount of years and you have a textbook, but yet but you're not given a year's notice. You're telling me you're actually doing it on the fly.
In an ideal rollout, the state would have phased in the new curriculum standards over a period of years. For example, they would have made changes that would have impacted K1 and 2 and allowed the districts to have the time to develop, to implement it, to evaluate it, then moved up to the next level, 3, 4, and 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. But the urgency for education reform at the state level is that we can't wait to phase it in. And every year that the students are in school, they're not getting the benefits of moving forward. So we're moving everybody forward at the same time, and consequently, rather than working on bands of curriculum, we're working on K-12 curriculum, not only in English language arts, but in math. And the standards are also impacting practices in science, social studies, and the technical areas where there are new requirements in terms of teaching literacy and reading and writing in the content areas. So it's not an ideal solution, but it is one that is shared by all districts throughout the state of Connecticut. When I attend curriculum council meetings with other representatives from Education Connection, we're sharing strategies for how we can move this process along. The state's advice to us has been to utilize as many resources as possible from other states around the country, particularly those states that have been awarded Race to the Top funds from the federal government, and to review their curriculum and pick and choose those pieces that we feel that we can use basically off the shelf. They don't necessarily correlate well with what we know and believe that students in Torrington should have, but so we're trying to be cognizant of what's out there, to borrow the best pieces, but also to try to weave them together and develop them into a coherent curriculum that meets the needs of our students, while being aware of the fact that implementing this simultaneously
means that students, particularly at the upper grades, are going to be confronted with many gaps in background knowledge that the new curriculum would have assumed that they mastered had they moved through the entire sequence as it's designed.
And what makes it difficult is that the students will be still tested
To be held accountable
for
those
the old
standards.
standards, yet we've had to transition to give teachers the opportunity to use the new standards and the new curriculum prior to the new assessment.
My last concern is it remedial in nature, i.e. is this common standards looking to bring up the lower end of the student body, and is it going to have the same positive effect on our upper, most successful students, or is there likelihood that it will bring down our top 2 or 5 or 10% of our excellent students who clearly over the years have done just phenomenal in our school system?
They're anything but remedial in nature. They're based on the idea that all students need to be college and career ready. They're benchmarked internationally with countries that have had tremendous academic performance success internationally. They narrow down the number of topics generally that need to be covered at each grade level, which allow the students and the teachers to explore key essential, what are called big ideas or enduring understandings in greater depth. And they really focus on making our top students be independent learners and very creative, higher order thinkers. So they're geared towards preparing all students to be successful in college and to help reduce the number of students that we currently have who need to take remedial courses when they leave here. And it will, I believe, continue to provide a very rigorous program of study for our highest achieving students while still lifting the tide, lifting all of the ships.
It's really much higher expectations for all students.
Thank you
And
very
then,
much.
and it'll also allow for more open-ended performance type of projects for students to complete so that they can really take it into an area of their interest and study it in depth, because we just have to make sure that what they create demonstrates the outcome, the standards.
So do Dickens and Twain and Shakespeare have a place in these materials you're talking about?
They certainly do. Many of the anchor texts that are mentioned in the Common Core standards include a very wide variety of classic core novels. There was an excellent article about this in the Washington Post not long ago. But they do call for a balance between the classic classic core novels that have typically been part of the high school curriculum, some adult contemporary fiction to give students an opportunity to engage and be motivated by the content there, and also a greater emphasis on informational text. The idea of the Common Core standards, however, is not to wipe out what's taught in English language arts classes. The important literature, drama, fiction, all of that will still be a part of that curriculum. But there is going to be a responsibility also on the part of those teachers to assure that they're equipping students with the strategies they need to tackle other kinds of text as well, since they are the ones who have the most experience with that.
Now, Common Core standards don't apply to private schools. Are there any adopting this voluntarily?
Not that I know of.
I didn't think so. Thank you.
One of the things too is that on the elementary level, you'll see a greater focus on nonfiction rather than fiction. Because you have a more complex vocabulary.
Well, depending on the fiction.
Right, I'm talking primary grades.
Okay, THS attendance and discipline.
One final question. Following up on Jeff, that was actually an excellent question, a really excellent question. At the next meeting, can you just do a little bit, reporting back to the board, in your opinion, why private schools are not adopting this? If this is really the best way to educate kids, why isn't that the best way to educate wealthy kids? Just, if you could report back why that is, I'd like to know too.
THS attendance and discipline. We had stopped doing it monthly, and we agreed last year to go in 3-month blocks. So this is our first. This is September, October, November. We have all the data, the numbers.
The first page is a summary, which shows the average daily attendance for students, and then the average daily attendance for faculty. And then on the bottom chart is the number of instances requiring discipline intervention. The first column deals with in-school and out-of-school suspensions total, and then by school.
Like I said, we'll be doing it. We'll be putting this in there every 3 months so that we can keep track of it instead of monthly.
I need to make a correction on the second page of data. That says Torrington High School, September, most common referrals listed by year. It's the second chart that's listed in there. Under September 11, Mrs. Creedon brought this to my attention. My data secretary pulled the information from our Power School system, and the category of displays of affection is listed on there as a most common referral. While we do have a very friendly and warm school environment, that category actually should be tardiness as opposed to displays of affection, so that is not an accurate number in that particular area. So where you see displays of affection listed as a most common infraction, that should be tardiness.
And the same for October of 2011.
Wherever you see displays of affection, that rarely rises to the level of requiring significant administrative intervention.
Thank you for that correction. Our next.
Are you saying that displays of affection aren't occurring,
That
not
often.
being reported, or they're not violations?
If they are occurring, they are occurring in relatively small numbers and should not be listed on here. Everywhere you see that listed, the category should have been tardiness.
And what is this displays of inappropriate displays of affection? Talking hand holding, kissing,
Physical contact.
Okay. Our next item was an item that Mr. Nargi had asked for, the expenses associated with the mediated settlement with the TEA. It's a summary of the legal expenses for the recent, that's for the prep period.
Yes.
Bill, is that a normal, is that pretty much what we normally spend on going through this process?
Well, luckily, we haven't been through that process very often because typically grievances don't get that far. It would have been considerably more had we gone all the way to arbitration. We headed off arbitration by reaching a mediated settlement, which saved us a lot of legal costs. So I have nothing to compare it to, but I think given the cost of legal fees and the amount of work that the grievance committee did with the teachers to get this resolved, that's a pretty fair price. I will point out that that was as of 11/9. We are drafting the agreement, so there might be a little bit more added to that. I can update you once it's completely done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. On to you, Ellen. First read of the policy for armed service, following vocational battery test option number 8.
Okay, it was, we discussed this in policy, and actually, Mr. Marola asked that we amend the policy, as you'll see in the bold print, to make the number 8 as a mandatory response to the Armed Services Aptitude Battery form. We do that in practice, it's just not in our policy, so we added it to the policy.
Okay. This is our first read on this?
This is the first read.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Next one, first read on, it's a new policy for management plan for students with food allergies and/or glycogen storage disease.
We did not have a policy on this. We received this policy from Goodwin.
Was the original.
Goodwin. This is a first read. We went through it. We discussed it. It was, Bill brought it to the teachers and the nursing staff. Anyone else?
No, administration.
Administration. We had parents come forward, give their input. It's a first read. You'll see in a couple places there's diabetes in parentheses. That has to be redacted, and we will revisit this again next policy. Anything else to add?
That pretty well covers it. It is required by law that we have such a policy.
All right. Moving on to our item K, Board of Education goals. I know, Paul, you had asked for a timeline, but we only have 5 months to get it done. So breaking it down into a timeline, everything's now. So it kind of became,
Well, I mean.
we could say
clearly,
January
probably
1st.
Year one of a 2-year goal. I mean, what's the point to get it correct?
Our goal was to get them this year. They're all going to be current 1-year goals, and then work on, work on really more of the implementation of it in the second year. Get it all worked out this year, and then get into it in the second year.
Yeah, great.
That's how I get over with the superintendent. And now she's going to do her goals based off of this.
And we also have to do a goal report to the city for their book.
Yes, they have to add our goals there. Okay. We're now going to move into an executive session for the review of the tentative agreement between the Board of Ed and the administrators, I guess I should say. Motion?
Motion to go into
Dan,
executive
second from Chris. All those in favor?
Might want to list who you're inviting into.
Oh, you want to come?
Yeah.
All right, we'll invite in Mr. Jocelyn. Is there anyone else we need to have in there, Bill?
Superintendent, Danielle.
Okay.
Danielle Belcher.
Well, invite in the superintendent and the business manager.